now listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam Keys, and today we're going to be talking about Bukayo Saka and what makes him world-class, what puts him in the category with the world's elite, and what makes him one of the best players on the planet. Last night, Bukayo Saka stepped up against Bayern Munich. He delivered a performance that only the very best can deliver. He opened the scoring. Much of the night's controversy will surround the penalty incident. However, that's not what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on Bukayo's performance as a whole and how that compares to what he's done in the Premier League this season. We're going to look at similarities in his game. We're going to look at the traits that are putting him up there with the very, very best. So please drop a like on this video. Please subscribe to the channel. And without further ado, we're going to deep dive into Bukayo and talk about his form right now. So firstly, when you need a big player, and what puts players into that elite category is their ability to step up when their team needs them most. It's about taking responsibility, accountability, and Bukayo Saka has very much been that player for Arsenal over the last 4 years. We go back to that tweet, Arsenal fans, you deserve better. Since then, Bukayo has basically carried Arsenal on his shoulders. He now has the players around him that he didn't have back then. There's a strong dressing room at Arsenal, but Bukayo still is the leader in the team when it comes to the biggest moments. We see him step up in the biggest games. We saw him score against Spurs. We saw him score against Liverpool. And quite often with Saka, he's the player that opens the score, and he's the player that gets that crucial goal for Arsenal. It's rare that we see him getting the fifth goal in a 5-0 win, although that does happen. But predominantly, Saka's goals come in big moments. His assists come in big moments. He's the player that Arsenal look to alongside Martin Odegaard. When we really have to dig deep, he is the man that quite often steps up for his team. And last night, we saw exactly that. This was Arsenal's biggest Champions League night for a long, long time, well over a decade. And when it comes to a night like that, you need someone to break the deadlock, someone that steps up and takes responsibility, that really splits the game open and makes everyone in the stadium and every one of his teammates believe. And last night, it was Bukayo Saka with an absolutely delicious finish. But look, before we get into that, we're going to have a look quickly at his numbers in the Champions League this season. Bear in mind, this is Saka's first season in the Champions League. And when you look at who he's surrounded by, interestingly, all English players, but Harry Kane, 10 goals and assists this season in the Champions League. This is a player approaching 31 years old, a player hugely experienced and absolutely world-class, despite the fact we absolutely hate him. Phil Foden, again, is a player that's been playing in this competition since he was 17, a player that's surrounded by world-class players, and a player that is now stepping up and proving that he is world-class himself. And forget who is world-class, Saka or Foden. What people need to realize is these are two exceptional players alongside the man in between them right now, Jude Bellingham. England have all this talent and should stop pitting it against each other and start working out how to utilize it. But Saka is in great company, 8 goals and assists in his debut season in the Champions League. The question was about Saka, can he do it in the Champions League? Of course he can. He did it in the World Cup. He did it in the Euros. He's done it in the Premier League. He's done it against all the biggest teams. He's done it in the biggest stages, and we're now seeing him doing it in the Champions League, and his numbers are up there with the very best. But last night, what I was really impressed with was his performance. If you look at his heat map, he was very much a touchline winger, but he was drifting into that right half space on occasions. And Alphonso Davies didn't know how to deal with him. We're talking about one of the best fullbacks in the world, someone who's won the Champions League before, someone who Real Madrid are desperate to sign. And Davies got booked very early on into the game because he was struggling with Saka within the first 10 minutes. But if you look at Saka, what's really interesting is he was heavily involved in everything good for Arsenal last night, but he completed 27 of 30 passes. Quite often, I would say, I don't want my players in those positions completing that many passes. But if you look at Saka's passes last night, the areas he was in, how tightly marked he was, how he had to get the ball out of his feet, the way him, Odegaard and White operated down that right-hand side, that shows just how good Saka's tight control is, how good his short game is. The Arsenal turned that into a small-sided game down the right-hand side of the pitch, and Saka was central to everything. So his passing numbers are so high because his accuracy was so high. His ability to get the ball and move it quickly just benefited Arsenal. But again, something that really stands out, 6 ground duels won. He was up against, as I said, a really physical, strong, fast fullback, and he ran him up and down the line last night and really worked. So, look, just a fantastic performance. Played another key pass as well and was just heavily involved in everything that was good for Arsenal. But let's look at the goal itself, because that is something that was just absolutely superb. But he was involved in other moments. And one of the things that will go unnoticed, and as I said, Saka's ability to get involved. So before we look at the goal, let's just have a quick look at the second goal, because this is something that goes completely unnoticed. Trossard gets the ball in the middle of the park after Declan Rice won a second ball. It's Saka that pops up in that right half space, plays it into Jesus, and plays a really difficult ball on his left foot straight into his feet and allows Jesus to carry that ball into the box. Jesus does all the work after that, but this is an example of Saka in the build-up. But as for the goal itself, because I'm not going to dwell too much on his work for Trossard's goal, because a lot of that was down to Jesus, but it was an example of Saka popping up in the right space to really be able to impact the game. But the goal itself, it all starts with Saka winning the ball, and he plays it. He's chasing Davies down the line. He gets it. Havertz plays it back to Ben White, but Saka starts drifting into that space. And the minute he drifts in, Ben White plays a lovely ball. Saka just uses his body, that little drop of the shoulder. He doesn't need to take a touch. He sees the defender coming at him. Bang. Lets it run right across his body, opens it up, and you can see it's a very difficult angle. There's 2 defenders, that one coming back closing, and then you've got Eric Dyer that he uses as a blocker for Neuer, bends it round him straight into the bottom corner. What's interesting, here's some other angles of it. You can see him and Davies going for the ball. Davies actually wins the ball first, gets to it first. Saka straight in. This is what we talk about with the ground duels. It's that determination. This is a player that doesn't just do the nice things. He doesn't give up. He's scrappy. He's strong. He's tenacious in the final third. He's got the same skills in his own box. All these skills, these are the traits that make Bukayo so dangerous. But if you look at it, he gets the ball. It's a 50-50 in the second image. This is where Kai Havertz comes in. It breaks loose. He knocks it back to Ben White. Ben White gets it. And you can see from the final image, the minute White has the ball, Saka's drifted into that space. White knows exactly where to play the ball, and Saka's using the space available to him. That's the sign of an intelligent player. He doesn't just have the technical capacity to be a great. He's got the intelligence, and he understands his position, and he understands how to really deliver threat in the final third just by moving his body. And as we can see with the drop of the shoulder, he doesn't need that extra touch. He knows how to score. He knows how to use his body to really kill defenders. But obviously the moment that will be talked about heavily is the penalty. So I'm not going to focus on that because there's 2 50-50 views around it. What I'm going to focus on is Saka's movement. If you look at it, when the ball comes through, he's straight on his bike. He's got Davies. You can see Davies looking at the ball. Davies is beat by Saka here, and we saw numerous times during the night that Saka actually tried to take Davies on in a foot race, and it was about a 50-50 who won each time. That's the first time for a while that we've really seen Saka do it. We saw him do it against Sheffield United. We saw him when he played against Austin Trusty, where he left him for dead. But Saka isn't the player that often tries to take players on in a foot race, and he's someone that you wouldn't consider as the fastest winger. He's not slow. He's not a Martinelli, for example, or a Leroy Sané in terms of pace. But I think last night showed Saka's far quicker than we think, and his burst and his strength allows him to have those foot races. But last night, his positioning is so clever in this instance that he leaves Davies for dead, and he's got 2 or 3 yards on him by the time he gets through. As for his touch, you can see he's straight round Neuer. Whether you think it's a penalty or not, I will leave it up to you to decide, because it hasn't been given, and we're not going to dwell on that because we're going to focus on the key points of the performance that have enabled Saka to become that world-class player. And this is an instance where we can see Again, that run and that intelligence, that movement off the ball, these are things that Saka's adding to his game that he didn't necessarily have before, because in previous years, a lot of what Saka did was his ability to control and utilize his technique on the ball. We're now seeing those added things, the off the ball running. And this is what makes Mohamed Salah so good, is Salah knows when to arrive. He knows how to hang on the defender's shoulder. He knows how to get in behind. And now that Saka's adding these things to his game, he's becoming even more dangerous. And that's why year on year, Saka's numbers keep improving, because there's still so much to add and so much to improve upon. But one of the things I was looking at, so the goal against Bayern, and this is why I put Saka in the world-class category, because one of the key things with being world-class is repeatable actions. Are you able to do those things week in, week out? And in Saka's case, the answer is yes. So we look at the goal last night of how he used a man to bend it into the back of the net. Very similar to Newcastle, but also very different. The Newcastle goal is arguably more different, but it's a 2-0 in a game where Arsenal were dominant versus a huge stage, one of the biggest nights of his career against Bayern, still 0-0. You look at the Newcastle goal, he approaches the box, he gets into it, he's running with the ball, pulls it back. He's got about 8 players between him and the goal, and he bends it around everyone and into that bottom corner. Again, very similar finish to the finish against Bayern, because it's that low, controlled, but there's quite a bit of venom on the strike. He's not a player that wants to pass the ball into the net. When he does that, he puts a lot of zip on the ball. That was something that Thierry Henry used to do. It looked like Henry passed the ball into the net. Henry used to really, he put a lot of weight on his kind of pass against the keeper, and that's why it was so difficult to defend against. And the other thing is the timing of the shot. If you take it as the keeper's setting himself, that's when you're most dangerous, and that's something that we're seeing Saka do, and it's repeatable. It's reliable, and this is what world-class players do. They step up in moments like this, and they're able to deliver time and time again. And defenders know you're going to do it, but they can't stop it. And again, when we talk about the off the ball, the movement, look at this goal against Forest. Gabriel Jesus carrying the ball up the pitch. You can see in the first graphic, Saka's running into the space. The defender's no idea where he is. He gets the ball, one touch, sets himself onto his right this time, and it's bang accurate into the bottom corner. And this is something that Saka maybe didn't have before, where his finishing wasn't always straight into the corners. He had chances where he maybe put it straight at the keeper, or when he did go for a corner, it would go slightly wide. This is something that's becoming more accurate and more reliable this season. He's always had the ability to do it, but it's doing it frequently and repeatedly that makes him really, really dangerous. And the data backs up with what I'm saying. So this is a shot map of Saka in the Premier League. If you look at where his shots are going and the positions of them, he's getting into the box, into that half space, and he's able to shoot time and time again. So the graphic on the right is where he shoots from, and the graphic on the left is where the shots go on goal. And we're starting to see more and more shots go towards the corners of the goal, into those areas that the keepers really struggle to stop it. The balls are the goals, the red dots are the shots. But as I said, we're really starting to see him hit those really dangerous areas and become more clinical with his finishing. And 14 goals this season, that's the sign of a player that's really grown. Right winger at 22 years old with 14 goals in 30 games is absolutely huge. And he is just getting better and better. And when you look at his assist numbers as well, this is the sign of a player who no one wants to play against. He's incredibly dangerous, and he is only getting better. But compare that with the Champions League. 4 goals in that competition, 4 goals from 13 shots, an absolutely crazy stat. And again, look at where the goals are. 3 of his goals have gone into the bottom right-hand corner. And that's something to the keeper's right, to just clarify. That's incredibly difficult to stop. And we saw one of the best keepers, arguably of all time, in Manuel Neuer, completely beaten. There was no chance he was getting to that ball. But Saka's ability to shoot and the timing of his shots and the ability to take that half step early, this is something that's incredibly dangerous and incredibly difficult to stop. It's something that Emile Smith-Rowe has in his game too. And the other one that's really good at it is Kevin De Bruyne and, of course, Mo Salah. But they take the ball early. They take the ball before the keeper's set. And Saka's now adding those elements to his game on top of everything. And this is what makes him so dangerous. And on top of that, he's got the ability to cut in, but he can go on either foot. So if you're a fullback, you're thinking, right, he's going to want to cut in on his left foot. He's going to want to shoot from there. Of course he is. That's his stronger foot. Any player wants to cut in on their stronger foot. But what makes Saka even more dangerous is he can go on the outside and go on his right foot comfortably. So if you're a defender, you think, right, if I can show him onto his right, but he can kill me on that foot. We've seen the goals against Burnley. We've seen it against Sheffield or against Nottingham Forest. We saw a screamer against Leeds last season. Same against Everton, where he puts them in the roof of the net with his right foot. As a defender, you're thinking, if I show him onto his right, he can do that. He can also cross the ball comfortably on his right foot, and he's equally as dangerous. Or you give him a bit of space, he cuts it in his left, and he does what he did against Bayern Munich. So we're now at the point with Bukayo Saka, the defenders are terrified as to what they can do. Do they move early, or do they give him that bit of space onto his right and really try to play the kind of the long game with he's on his weaker foot, how do I kill him? But actually, Saka is destroying fullbacks every week, and this is what we're seeing. But if you look at his traits, Saka ranks very high against all the top players. If you look at his touches in the penalty box, 96th percentile, progressive passes, 98th percentile. But interestingly, all his attacking numbers are up there with the very, very best. Shot creating actions, 88th percentile, non-penalty goals and assists, 88th percentile, assists, 85th percentile, progressive carries, all these things, non-penalty goals, 82nd. He is very much up there with the best. But interestingly, 94th percentile for tackles. He's a player, as I said, he's involved in every action of the game, and he continues to kill players week after week after week. And this is what makes him world class. It's not the ability to step up and do something by chance, the odd moment, outperform your XG, all these things. It's repeatable actions, it's reliability, it's accountability. And that's what makes players world class. The bar for right wingers is Mo Salah, and the only other player close to Salah right now is Bukayo Saka in that position. And you can talk about Phil Foden. Phil Foden's best position isn't on the right wing. Foden should be playing centrally. It's where he's at his most dangerous. And Saka is the player on the right wing that no one wants to play against right now. But finally, just to wrap up, please leave your comments. Tell us what you think of Bukayo. Where can he improve? What do you think of him right now? We're in the running of our biggest season to date, and Bukayo is the player that is really stepping up. In previous years, it has been the run-in where he has struggled to deliver. He's almost ran out of steam, but this year, Mikel's been able to rest him during a point when we were absolutely blowing teams away by getting them off early. Some games getting them off as early as half-time. So that essentially gives Saka a full game's rest. He's also had some injury problems where he hasn't gone away from it with England. He has missed games for Arsenal as well, the Luton game. So there's slightly less mileage in the tank this year. And the hope is that that will see him through the run-in and allow him to really deliver in the biggest moments for Arsenal. But as I said, please drop us a comment. Please drop a like on the video. And please tell us what you think of Bukayo. Do you think he is world class? And if you don't, tell us why. If you do, tell us why. Have a good day, and thank you for joining us.